Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting. The board has already met in executive session, and we saluted the flag in there, so we don't need to do that again. I just wanted to point out the statement of public notice in your agendas. It says that this meeting was advertised so that people know we're having a public meeting. It was advertised in the newspaper and wherever we're supposed to advertise online. We welcome input from the public, and there are 2 times during the meeting when you can come up to talk to us. The first is on agenda items. So if you have comments or questions on anything that's on the agenda, you can come up at that time. The second time is later in the meeting, and that is public comment on anything that you want to comment on. If you come up, you should sign the clipboard. You can sign it after you talk if you want to, and put your address on there. And please tell us your name and address when you come up to the microphone. Thank you. Okay, we have our superintendent's report has 2 items. Oh, the roll call, sorry. I always forget that. Should write it on there.
Mr. Byrne?
Here.
Mrs. Swerner?
Here.
Mrs. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Salmon?
Here.
Mrs. White?
Here.
Mrs. Richmond?
Here.
Mrs. Korn?
Here.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Here.
Mr. Markarian?
Here.
Mrs. McCune?
Here.
Madam President?
Thank you. We're up to superintendent's report. There are 2 items. Would someone like to make a motion to move them? Mrs. White and Mrs. Wooldridge. Thank you. Do you want to say anything? First is approval of new clubs, and the other is the HIV report that we get each month. Okay, we'll vote on these and then you can do your report. Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
I'm going to abstain on 1 and vote yes on 2.
Mrs. Swerner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes,
Madam President?
thank you. Mr. Markarian?
So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of our strategic planning meeting dates upcoming. The first one is a week from tonight. It's October 1st at 7 o'clock in the Ridge High School cafeteria. And then we are meeting every 2 weeks after that, basically, for a total of 3 meetings. And I was going to tell Maddie that students are welcome to come too, but she's not here tonight, so I'll
There's
talk
other
to...
students here, so tell them. They're out there.
Oh, there's some students. Hi, guys. So we're certainly welcoming members of the public, and students are members of the public. So you guys are welcome to participate if you'd like to do that. I'll follow up with Mr. Kraus tomorrow and make sure he has the information for you guys, because there is an email to RSVP if you're coming. So I'll pass that along to him. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love to have some students. We're going to break into groups, and people are going to give input about what their vision of the district is, and we're going to come up with a plan. So if we had students that could spread around into some of their groups, that would be great. Okay, we're up to public comment on agenda items. If anyone has a comment on anything on the agenda. It's not a particularly long agenda, but tonight, but. Okay, I don't see anyone coming up, so we'll close public comment on agenda items. We're up to approval of minutes. Would somebody like to make a motion? Mrs. Gray and Mrs. Swerner. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes.
Mrs. Swerner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Madam President?
Okay, we're up to the finance report. There are 19 items, I think, under finance. Would someone like to make a motion? Mrs. Wooldridge, would someone like to second? Mrs. Korn? I can give the finance report before we vote, because then I can talk about the items. The Finance Committee met last week on September 20th. The first thing we talked about was the WAMs curtain wall project and science lab project. So the curtain wall is the back wall of WAMS. It's like a metal wall in the very back of the building, on the back of the 300 and 400 wings, if you've ever looked back there. So this curtain wall has some holes in it and some damage from over the years. It's been on the project list for a number of years since we had our 2011 report on our facilities and what needed to be improved. So it's been on our list. Originally, we were talking about doing the curtain wall project during phase 2 of the WAMS HVAC, which is the last installment of HVAC in the district, which will be next summer, because it made sense that they're going to be working in the 300 and 400 wing then. In the meantime, there's Dave Harding, our facilities manager, has been doing research on the curtain wall and whether replacing versus repair makes sense. In the meantime, there's been new curriculum in science with the new science standards, and so the needs for the science labs have evolved over the years since our original plan was developed. So at this point, the recommendation is to do the repairs to the curtain wall instead of tearing out the whole curtain wall during the time that the HVAC is being done, right, next summer, and then do the science labs the following summer. So the Finance Committee is recommending that we use some of the money that we were budgeting for the curtain wall for the science labs and spend less on the curtain wall because we're going to repair it instead of replacing it. The second thing we talked about was just a very brief conversation about the snow removal at Ridge High School for the track and/or turf. So just wanted to get on the record that we know there's a chance that this snow blower that we're going to try could potentially damage the track or turf if there is not a tarp under it. We're going to get a small section, not that small, but part of the track covered by a tarp to see how it works on a tarp. There'll be certain snow conditions that it won't work without a tarp because when it ices up, the turf pellets and the track surface will get stuck to the ice. So the snow blower would only work under certain snow conditions on the actual just turf or uncovered track. So we just wanted to make sure that the public knows that we're going to try this, and maybe it'll be successful in a lot of kinds of snow and maybe not. We're not sure. It depends on the weather this winter also. The hope being that if the tarp experiment is successful, that maybe the teams would then be willing to fundraise to get more tarp if they think that we need it, because then they would know that it works. The next thing we talked about was we had a review of Aramark's grounds and food services. Mr. McLaughlin gave us an overview of the management structure and talked about how we use Advocate, which is like a monitoring company that gives an annual report on these two services to tell us how it's going and give recommendations. So we went through several recommendations for food services in terms of public relations, making sure that parents understand how the food plan works, making sure that the little kids understand how to buy lunch without messing up and buying all the a la carte items. So we talked about some of the improvements that have already been made with sending out emails to explain, updating stuff on the website, putting more signs in the cafeteria to explain to the little kids especially how it works. And there's more plans in progress to improve that. We talked about Avid Exchange, which is a company that we use that processes our utility bills. There's lots and lots of gas meters and electric meters in the district, and this company basically monitors all the meters and bills and pays the bills. It's under a state contract, so lots of school districts use it. Mr. McLaughlin said that they've changed how they process their payments, so he wanted to make sure that we have a document that holds them accountable, and they've finally agreed to sign this document, so we feel like we're 100% comfortable with how they're working right now. The next thing was a brief conversation about the fact that the Touchdown Club is donating money to upgrade, to get a new speaker, new amplifier and speakers for the football field, and speakers by the snack shack so that people who are up there working at the shack or hanging out up on the hill there can hear what's going on during the game. So that's on the finance agenda. So the board, is grateful for that donation. That should be nice. And we talked about the agenda items, which I can go through. Items 1 to 4 are standing items. Item 5 is a donation from the WAMS PTO for $10,000 to participate in the United Way Culture and Climate Initiative. For those of you that are familiar, Mount Prospect participated in this and is still participating in it. Item 6 is the disposal of equipment and books. Item 7 is a renewal of our contract for providing lunches for the Lord Sterling School. They pay us for the lunches, and then we provide them. It's a small school, so they don't have their own food services. Item 8 is a renewal of our contract for payroll services. Item 9 is a renewal of our contract with the Y for our Special Services Aquatics Program. Item 10 is tuition from out-of-district students, and items 11 to 17 are services for students. The last thing we talked about is Mr. McLaughlin reported a summary of the district's investment activity as of August 31st. For the months of July and August, the district earned $35,702. Annualized, this would result in an earnings of $214,000. This is a significant increase in earnings, which had been hovering about $48,000 a year until last fall, when Mr. McLaughlin noticed that rates of return on the New Jersey Cash Management Fund had increased significantly. At that time, it was recommended that the district realign its invested funds to take advantage of this rate change. And at the same time, we were able to leverage our agreements with the local banks to provide similar levels of return on investment. So that's good news, and hopefully that will continue. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, there's one on there. Okay, I didn't see that on there. That was late. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. McEwen. We had one late item, number 19, that got on the agenda after the Finance Committee met. The Finance Committee met last Thursday. Last Friday, it came to our attention that the project that the Liberty Corner School PTO has been funding to add some water fountains over at the school ran into a snag with the outdoor water fountain, where they had hoped to be able to run the plumbing to an outdoor water fountain out by the playground by kind of burrowing, if you will, or tunneling underneath the driveway from the school, and that didn't work. So they're going to have to go the more old-fashioned route, which is to essentially trench to get the plumbing out to the playground to do the water fountain. So the Liberty Corner School PTO is donating an additional $7,000 because that's much more expensive than the burrowing technique that didn't work. So we want to thank them for their willingness to do that and get that project finished.
Thank you. Mr. Byrne?
Yes, on the finance minutes, you see that it indicates Mr. Byrne expressed his opinion.
Oh, I'm
that he
sorry,
does
I
not
didn't
think-
read that part.
So,
Yeah, I forgot to say that when we were talking about the track and snow removal, I did make a note in there that Mr. Byrne does not agree with the board paying for any of the snow removal on the track.
so just a couple comments. One, we don't know how many days a year we lose because of snow, and I'd like to have some history. Are we doing this for 1 day, 10 days, and we don't seem to have any records at all? So that was point number one. Point number two, there's a cost, I believe, in having the tarp put down, having the tarp taken up, where to store it. I think it's going to be a significant expense, so, and also the snow blowing, and we haven't talked about that at all. They argue that Aramark has enough workers standing around that they'll be able to do that, and I will challenge that. The alternatives, I think, because most of the kids in the track program are not doing, hurdles and things, I think they're just running, and I think there's a lot of alternate ways to provide running space, not racing space, but running space, whether it be trying to rent one of the other, or accompany some of the other schools in the indoor facilities, or even plowing a special track around so the kids could run on non-turf ground for practice. So I think there's a lot of alternatives. I don't like the idea of putting up $30,000, round numbers, and maybe that's not correct, because we're talking about with or without the field cover. But I think there's a need for the parents of the students to contribute, and they don't want to. There's also the concern that, gee, if you're going to do it for lacrosse, what about the softball team? What about the baseball team? What about all of the other sports? So this could be just the tip of an iceberg. So I have a lot of concerns, and That's why I'm very concerned.
Anyone else have any questions? Mrs. Wooldridge?
Yeah, I know it's early, but I was wondering if you had any estimate about the renovation of the science rooms at WAMS, like about how much that would cost? Not yet. You just know that it needs to be done. Okay.
And I have a question. I just wanted to see if I can get more information about the program that the WAMS PTO was sponsoring at the WAM Manor. Just an overview and how, like, how it would be incorporated into the day-to-day at WAM Manor. That's all.
So I can speak to it a little bit from my observations at Mount Prospect School, where they did the same program. But basically, they tried to create an environment that is sustainable, meaning that they help you set up a program that will sustain itself over time, regardless of who's at the school, who's leading the school, to create a program that's in place. And they do that first by doing surveys, so they'll do a staff survey, student survey, a parent survey, similar to what we've done in the past for all the schools. And then they provide some staff to come and do some leadership type meetings to help the administration try to put something in place that will sustain itself over time. They make several visits back to the school over the course of the year, and I believe that the intent is to continue for a 3-year period before they kind of pass it off. So this is just the first year, and I believe we'll be looking at a similar cost going forward, maybe less in the second and third year, but there would be a cost to keep them at the schools.
But the PTO is paying for all of it every year?
Well, I don't want to make promises about what the PTO is going to do in years 2 or 3. I'm not sure.
And is this just replacing the character education program they already have?
No, it's not replacing it. No, it would supplement what they're already doing.
And the surveys are going to be happening during school?
I believe the surveys for the students are.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mr. Salmon?
Rod, could you just tell me what goes on with Lord Sterling's school? Like, I'm looking back at the August minutes from the Finance Committee, and it says they changed their meal plan to like increase the cost, and that we were going to charge them $4. Can you just tell me like how that relationship works?
So the relationship is that they are a private school for the disabled, and they do not have their own food production facility. They offer lunch to their students, and since before I came here 7 years ago, the district had a relationship where Lord Sterling contracted with the district for the district to provide them the school lunch. And what you have here tonight is an approval to increase the fee to cover our costs of what our true operating costs are for that lunch, basically. So it's about just under 2,800 lunches a year we produce for them. And, they come over and they pick them up. We're responsible only for the production of those meals through Aramark, our third-party contractor.
So just the change in the contract is just to make this so that we're not losing money on every meal that we provide. It's
That's
just
correct.
that cost.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Mrs. Gray?
I just have a question about the $10,000 donation. I understand that it's a donation, and I think it's wonderful that the PTO is able to do that. I'm wondering, as I remember back to when Mount Prospect came to the Board of Education asking to introduce this program into our district, my recollection is the cost was under $2,000. Why is it so expensive to do this at WAMS? I know that it's a bigger school, but Mount Prospect is over 600 students. Is there something different about the program?
Not that I know of.
I don't remember the exact amount.
It might have been 2,500 at Mount Prospect, but it wasn't as much, yeah.
And do we currently fund the continuation of that program through district funds for Mount Prospect?
I'd have to check.
have a follow-up at our next meeting with the questions about this. Okay.
What item is that?
5.
Any other questions or comments for finance? Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne,
Yes.
Mrs. Swerner,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes,
Madam President.
thank you. We are up to personnel. There are 17 items. Would someone like to make a motion? Mrs. Swerner and Mrs. White.
Personnel just met this Friday, so the minutes are not available yet, but at some point this week for your reading enjoyment, the minutes will come out. These items are pretty much standard fall personnel activity. Are there any questions before we vote?
There's an addendum page in case people didn't notice it.
Where is that?
It's a separate page.
Oh, okay, I just found it.
Any questions before we vote? Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne,
Yes?
Mrs. Swerner,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes?
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes,
Madam President.
thank you. We're up to policy. There are 2 items. Would someone like to make a motion to move them? Mr. Salmon, Mrs. Richmond seconded.
Yeah, I have the report, hold on. So, all right, so we have the first reading for policy and regulation number 1613. It's the disclosure and review of applicants' employment history. And basically, in hiring any new employees, the district has to research their employment history regarding any sexual misconduct or child abuse dating back as far as 20 years in their employment history. The Department of Education will provide the forms for the disclosure forms. So when we are sending out a form to past employers, they have 20 days to respond. In the interim, a prospective employee can be hired on a provisional basis for 90 days pending the outcome of any information received back from the employers. And when we're receiving the form for former employees, because we'll have to fill these forms out as well for anyone who worked in our district, we have 20 days to respond as well. And if you neglect to respond and the employee is terminated for lack of information, the district can be liable for not responding in a timely manner. So basically, it's just an extra, it's not the background check, it's just an extra form you have to send to everyone in the last 20 years that this person's worked for, who is applying for a job here, or, anyone who's worked here and applied for another job, they have to do the same thing, and it's a mandate. So, that's fun. Do you have any questions about that?
I mean, we're only going to be able to go back as far as what they put on the resume, right? We're not going back
Yes,
further
but
than that.
that's the rule is 20 years, though, that's what they said.
I mean, my daughter just did this when she was applying for jobs. I mean, she's only 23, so she didn't have as many to remember, but even then, she had a ton of them, because she had to put every job she ever had where she worked with children. So, and she had to call them all to remind them to turn the form in, to her district. It was a real hassle.
It's time consuming.
Yeah, it
and
was
it's,
really
and
time-consuming
it's
for the district
expensive.
and a pain for the people applying, yeah.
Sure.
To
It's
stress
just like
out about it.
another step that you
Yeah,
have to go through.
and then if like your former employer doesn't exist anymore, what do you do? There's all these unknown questions about like how to handle it. It's another state mandate.
Yeah.
It's like good intentions, but
Right.
a little bit impractical.
That makes a lot more
Yeah.
work for
Yeah.
hiring and whatever. The next is the policy and regulation 5561, which is the use of physical restraint and seclusion techniques for students with disabilities. The policy and regulation were revised because the Department of Education was establishing some new guidelines, which are follows. They were providing a definition of mechanical restraint. They were giving more guidance on post-incident reporting to parents, as well as how to document the incident. And they were giving more guidelines on training of school personnel in the event of forced seclusion and restraint techniques. Everyone good for that? And then policy 8561, which is procurement procedures for school nutrition programs. This is not a big deal, just a sentence was removed from the policy regarding the monitoring of invoices from the Food Service Management Company.
And I actually took that one off the
I
agenda.
was gonna
Not
say
your
it's not
fault,
on there.
not your fault at all,
Sorry,
Ms.
I'm just
Corr.
reading off my minutes.
No, not your
Is that
fault. We
okay?
did talk about it at the policy committee meeting, and
Maybe I should read.
I realized in looking over the minutes that we don't need that
Oh.
policy just because we're not part of the federal school lunch program
Okay.
anymore. We used to be, we're not anymore,
You can
so
just scratch
they
that
can
then.
they can still remove that sentence. It won't bother us.
And that's it. I think everything else, second reading, we went,
Nothing's changed.
nothing's changed since last time. Yep.
Mr. Brown?
I'd like to ask a question about the varsity letters for interscholastic extracurricular activities, 2431.8, it's second reading. I don't remember the discussion for the first reading, so but it implies that you can get them for non-sports events. I'd like to know more about that policy.
Really? Well, that was a while ago, Mike, and... I'll pull it up. But essentially, you're right, it says that there's a possibility of getting... Possibility of getting, a varsity letter for something that is not sports-related, but... Oh, there we go. Nice.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
So we're saying that- Yeah, so you can approve like school-sponsored interscholastic extracurricular activities that include competitions in which the students compete against each other students enrolled in schools outside of the school district.
Any competitive, anything.
Yeah.
So like
so
forensics?
I
Yeah.
guess like
Qualify?
forensics or anything.
The operative word is may.
Yeah.
They may be eligible
Maybe.
to earn a varsity letter awarded by the school district.
So the debate team could possibly get a varsity letter. I don't have any problem if they do, but would the debate team,
Right, so they're basically saying that at the district's discretion, as approved by the superintendent or his or her designee, it may be possible to earn a varsity letter
Oh, I have
in other school-sponsored interscholastic extracurricular activities.
okay?
I have it up in minutes, actually.
Any
Oh,
other
good.
questions about policy? No? Okay. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes,
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes?
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. Bouldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes,
Madam President?
thank you. We're up to the curriculum committee.
Okay, so the curriculum committee met on September 7th, and last week, we approved the 3 new textbooks for AP Seminar, but I'll report on the rest of the meeting. So district goal number 2 for 2018 through 20 is an important guide for the committee, and the goal is to strengthen the ability of the staff to promote social, emotional health, and well-being outcomes through staff development. So Ms. Fox distributed 2 books that are related to this goal. One of them is for grades K through 5, and it's called The Other Side of the Report Card, Assessing Students' Social, Emotional, and Character Development. And then for grades 6 through 12, there's a book called Higher Expectations, Promoting Social, Emotional Learning and Academic Achievement in Your School. And one of the Board of Education goals for 2018-19 is to read and discuss the other side of the report card. Okay, so We had an update on the STEAM pathways. The Academy model for STEAM is being phased out, and in its place are 3 pathways based on Project Lead the Way programs in biomedical science, computer science, and engineering. Students currently in grades 10 through 12 are still in the Academy, but 9th graders are not. Mr. Miziak supervises the biomedical science pathway, Ms. Bowman supervises the computer science pathway, and Mr. Fackelman supervises the engineering pathway. The year 3 courses in all 3 pathways have honors weighting. So for biomedical science, Principles of Biomedical Science is now in its 3rd year. Human Body Systems, which is the 2nd course, is now in its 2nd year, and Medical Interventions, the 3rd course, is now in its 1st year. Completion of this course will satisfy the 21st century career requirement for high school graduation. The computer science, in the computer science pathway, Computer Science Principles, the 1st course, is a collaboration between the mathematics and business departments and has been very successful. And the projected enrollment this year is 86 students, and this course is not a prerequisite for AP Computer Science. AP Computer Science is the 2nd course, and it's in very high demand, and unfortunately, not every single student that wanted to is able to take it this year. Cybersecurity, the 3rd course, is now in its 1st year. In the engineering pathway, Introduction to Engineering and Design, which is the 1st course, is now in its 3rd year. And let's see, Principles of Engineering is now in its 2nd year. And Civil Engineering and Architecture, the 3rd course, is now in its 1st year. The next item on the agenda, we talked about a number of summer curriculum projects. We had a brief platooning update. So the goals of platooning in 5th grade are to create a better learning environment for students, to reduce stress for teachers and students, and to provide an improved transition to William Annan. Teachers and administrators participated in a planning day on August 27th, where teachers completed curriculum maps for marking period 1. The teachers will meet once per marking period to continue to plan. In addition, teachers and students in 5th and 6th grade will be surveyed this year, 2018-19, and also in 2019-20. The goal is to have one district model for platooning with variations that are tailored to each elementary school. For example, if schools have different numbers of 5th grade sections, then the platooning approach would vary. We also had updates on several fine and practical arts courses, including online personal finance, robotics 1, robotics 2, and preliminary research work began this summer on the technology education 6 through 12 program evaluation and the visual arts education K through 12 program evaluation. For science, the CP Chemistry C, CP Chemistry M, and honors chemistry courses were all revised as one project by a team of 6 teachers. So for all 3 courses, a new unit sequence and pacing was created to achieve better balance with math and science alignment. AP Chemistry was also updated. English Language Arts, there were a number of summer projects. Final standards-based report cards for English Language Arts were created for grades K and 2, and the report card for 1. A program evaluation for English Language Arts in grades 3 through 5 is now in its 1st year. English and Language Arts 6 were consolidated into one curriculum. Language Arts 7, let's see, another project, Language Arts 7, William Annan Vocabulary Strategies, and Ridge Summer Reading Updates were done. A book, Hillbilly Elegy, was added to English 12. Honors English, which is also Honors English 12, was also updated. This is a world literature course. AP English Language and Composition, AP English Literature and Composition were both updated. And then for AP Seminar, this is a new course, and it's for this year, and it's the 1st course in the 2-part AP Capstone program. The course is organized around the College Board's 4 big ideas. Course texts have been selected, and a post-exam unit was created to focus on preparing students for AP Research, which is the second AP capstone course. In AP Seminar, some parts of the AP exam are given by the teacher during the school year, and in addition, certain College Board policies for this course are different from our school district policies. So a parent letter was created that describes the College Board requirements and policies, and was distributed. Let's see. We also had some items for discussion. We talked a bit about grading process and procedure, and according to policies, teachers should be updating Aspen every 2 weeks. And then the supervisors also look at the Aspen portal every 2 weeks and monitor based on what teachers are doing for specific courses. There is a method in Aspen also to communicate about ungraded assignments, which teachers have been learning how to do. The next topic was the level change process and appeal process. Ms. Smith and Mr. Kraus are revising the entire level change and appeal process for 2019-20 course scheduling, and they will present their plan to the curriculum committee at a future meeting. We had previously talked a little bit about putting a W on the transcript if students withdraw from a course. Ms. Smith is planning this year to talk with students and parents and determine the best timeline for adding a W to the student's transcript if they drop a course. And she currently plans to implement this change in 2019-20. We talked about a new component for 2019-20 course scheduling, which is a teacher recommendation. This teacher recommendation would not be a barrier to taking an honors or AP course as long as the student earns the qualifying grade, but it would be additional information that would be communicated to the student and parent. The elementary gifted and talented program, there is going to be a program evaluation of this program during the current school year, and there'll be considerations for modifying the program based on the outcome of the program evaluation. And then we also reviewed some historical data for 7th grade Algebra 1 for the last 4 years. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Byrne?
I don't know whether I read this in the minutes or, but it had to do with students don't like to read anymore, and they don't take notes very easily. And as a result, they're used to listening and watching. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg, the fact that the world has changed so much in the last 10, 20 years, whatever it is. Did I read about the reading issue in the minutes here or something? Was that discussed in curriculum, or is that?
It came up briefly when we were talking about ELA, some of the program revisions, about how trying to find ways that the students, can absorb the material, and there's feedback that they are more used to watching videos of things, and and so the teachers are trying to come up with strategies to get them to, be able to read and take notes, because sometimes it's easier to go watch a video on how to do something than to read the instructions to learn how to do it. So that came up when we were talking about English language arts.
So that was here, okay.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, there was an Education Week article about this very topic in
Well,
the
maybe
last
that's,
week.
okay.
Yeah, the same exact topic.
Because, gee, what a complicated area, curriculum, and to try and adjust to the modern child or modern world.
Right. Any other questions? Mrs. Korn?
I have a list of questions.
Okay.
Sorry. I had a question about the civil engineering. See, I'm using my computer today, so it's kind of a pain. The civil engineering, the third course, in civil engineering and architecture, the third course, which is in the engineering thing for Project Lead the Way. And it only has 8 kids in it
This year.
this year.
Right,
Yeah.
as a new course.
But are we guaranteeing that there's going to be more than 8 after that, you think? I mean, how long does a class stay around if it's only 8 kids?
Well,
Like, how many kids keeps the class going?
I'm just going to say, I asked the same question
Right.
during the meeting, and the answer was that it's the first year. Mr. Fackelman was kind enough to answer it. The first year, this is not surprising, but that the expectation is, as with many courses at Ridge High School, word of mouth is how students hear
Right.
about and desire, registration in a course.
It's just it's such a particular course.
It's
for-
very specific.
It's very specific.
Right.
for-
I also
for high
remember it
school
came up
curriculum.
that some of them are going to take it, like they're choosing to take it senior year instead of junior year, so they're planning on taking it.
Right.
So if there's both juniors and seniors taking it, then you would hope that in subsequent years there'd be more of them.
Sure, I mean, we could
Right.
have good teachers in there, and it's 8 kids.
Yeah.
I'm just-
Yeah, there, also, next
Yeah, I'm
year,
just-
Mr.
yeah.
Fackelman said that 28 students would be eligible for the
Right.
course, so there could be a larger enrollment
Again,
next
I mean,
year.
the whole situation there is a lot, it's not a ton of kids, but I appreciate how they're trying to streamline it and all that. The platooning, and did you get any feedback on how it was going? They're doing it, right?
Right.
So was there any kind of, like, early, okay, this is super early, but.
Well, it was really the first week of school.
Right.
When we had, I know
That's
now
what I
it's,
think, but like.
we had our meeting the
That's true.
first week of school, so it was
I
actually,
feel like it's like the second month of school.
it was actually the second day of school, so not at
Not
that
the first
meeting.
day ago. Okay. All right, so we'll keep our eye on that, because, I just want to see how that went. And then the AP capstone courses,
Yeah,
and then when they were saying the College Board policies are differing from our policies, now, I don't really trust the College Board as far as I could throw the College Board. I feel like our policies are probably a lot more educationally sound than the College Board policies. So what kind of policies are we talking about here, like how they take it, or,
well, there's, in the curriculum folder,
okay.
there's a copy of the actual parent letter that was sent out.
And that tells
So if you want all the
everything.
details, there,
Okay, I'll
you can read that. Yeah.
Because that was just another one. And then I'm totally excited about them working on revising the Gifted and Talented program. I think that's like something that's been well overdue. And the last question is Algebra 1 in 7th grade. So you did this little analysis here, and it shows that there's a bunch of students taking it that didn't get the score on the map test they're supposed to get.
Well, no, that's not really, I know it's maybe a little confusing.
Well, it says
There's
numbers.
a range of MAP scores where students are eligible,
Okay,
okay?
did I read this wrong?
And, but there's an kind of an
Okay, okay. I mean,
there's a range of
I mean,
scores where
we're-
students are eligible, but there's like an optimal MAP score
Right, so
for success.
for
And
success,
some of the
so we have a
students are
bunch of
below
students
that.
that are not in the optimal scoring range. Is that
Right. They're
fair?
in the range, but not at the optimal level.
And historically, they don't do as well,
Yeah, so there's a potential.
but they're still in
for-
Algebra 1 in
Right.
7th grade. Do we have an issue there? Is this going to be a problem for, I mean, you have 94 kids in this class.
Yeah, I
that's-
agree.
That's
It's
crazy.
40% in almost every year of the kids that are
Right.
not
A
in the
lot of
optimal
students
range.
qualified
So
this year,
that's-
so I
that's a
think
lot.
it's just something to watch.
But, I mean, the numbers are going up. They went from 63 last year till 94 this year. Is the class size that much bigger?
No.
So then what's the story? Like, are these kids all of a sudden math geniuses, everyone?
More kids met the criteria,
Right.
to tease out exactly
But a lot more
why.
also are not like in that ideal range either.
Right,
But it's proportional. I mean, it's
I guess, yeah.
40%
yeah,
every year.
right.
So does that tend to be a problem? I
So
don't
we
know.
won't know if it's a problem until we see how the year goes.
Okay. I mean, do we encourage kids not to take Algebra 1 in 7th grade?
Well, certainly, parents and students are given all the options.
I know, yeah, I've been through this, but.
Right.
I'm just curious. I just wanted to talk about it a little bit.
But tying into that, so this year they started the sixth grade accelerated
Accelerated,
math.
yeah.
So I would think that the assumption is if you are in the sixth grade accelerated math, are you expected to feed into then seventh grade algebra? And if so, how many kids are in the sixth grade accelerated math? Because that might give you an idea of
On top,
what the numbers are.
on top of the amount here? Like, I mean, I know these are just 7th graders now, I get it.
Right.
But none of these kids, were these kids in did we just,
No, no, no,
accelerated
this
math
is
is
this
new.
year's, it
So
just started
All
this
the
year.
kids in here now were not in accelerated
No,
math.
Right.
So
because
we
it
can
didn't
assume that we
exist.
have accelerated math, and then all the other kids are going to do
Test in.
test in, so is it going to be like 200 kids in
I
algebra
don't
1 and
think so.
7th
I
grade?
really don't think so.
Like, it's almost 100 already. Like, I don't know, it just seems like the numbers are wacky to me, that's all. It's just like it just seems, I don't know, unbalanced, I
I
don't
just
know.
want to say that.
Am I crazy?
Ms. Bowman is diligently monitoring the situation.
Okay. All right.
She really is.
Mr. Seno?
So I just had a comment on Project Lead the Way. I think we had some students last year said that they weren't really that excited about Project Lead the Way, so because there was more theory and less hands-on, so it's good to see at least in the biomedical science pathway, there's like a couple cool things that are Liberty
Right.
Science Center and field trips to observe robotic surgery. So I think those are really cool things in the biomedical science, and then comp sci is obviously hands-on. In the engineering pathway, I think that was where the complaint came in from the kids about more theory and less kind of hands-on. So was there any discussion about that in the meeting, about to add, more practical engineering approach to the engineering pathway?
Yeah, I think that was where Michael Falcoman was talking about the new staff member,
Right.
Right.
taking a little bit of a different spin on the course and actually having that new staff member working with the existing staff member, kind of brainstorming and sharing ideas after he had just gone to the training over the summer. And I think Michael was positive that there would be a shift in that would get more hands-on out of it. That was my
Great,
take
yeah.
on what he had to say.
Because the biomedical science has some cool stuff, doesn't it? The AP Comp Sci, is that normal that the enrollment request has spiked to 167%? Does that happen year over year, or is this just an aberration?
Well, it has been a very popular course since it was reintroduced a number of years ago. It may be even more popular now because we have the pathway.
Yeah.
Because initially it was introduced kind of as a standalone course, and it was pretty popular, but I don't know.
It was only reintroduced
Um,
like 3 years ago.
Pardon me?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
did.
I don't really know.
So,
I just,
but at
That's
the
why it
past
was
3
brought
years, have we
back.
been like turning
The request
kids
for it.
away because it's at capacity for the past 3 years?
I don't think we turned them away the
No.
first year or two. I think it's just become, it's a hot thing in, like, it's just hot, field
And
right
it's
now.
another
Right.
AP class to
Yeah.
take.
Yeah,
So-
and it's a good area to take.
Also, Tim, it was pointed out at the meeting that AP Computer Science is one of, I think, 3 or 4 AP courses that sophomores are eligible to take. So that also increasing requests for the course.
Oh, okay, so like the ninth graders are taking comp sci principles, and then they can go right into AP comp sci, but then they're competing with
qualify.
juniors and seniors for that same spot. Okay. Yeah, interesting. I mean, 167% is a lot. The teacher recommendations, it says that, I think that's a really good idea. Is there some way that we're planning to memorialize those? I mean, I understand it's going to be communicated to the teacher, and, I mean, the student and the parent, but is the guidance counselor like putting those in the student file or something to kind of go back and look at?
Yeah, Ms. Fox, I think the intent there is to make it part of the student information system. Yeah, so
Oh,
it
okay.
would be memorialized in the scheduling process.
And that would be just for like upper level advanced
To-
courses,
to
like
get-
college, honors?
for honors or AP.
Okay. I think that's a really good idea. And then the last thing is kind of focusing on Ms. Korn's point about, this ratio of students that are not in the optimal range with regards to Algebra 1. Maybe the 6th grade advanced math, accelerated math will help that. I just kind of, the asterisk there, I think is, kind of tells the story to me. MAP is an untimed test, so many of these students took longer than 2 periods to complete the test. So I remember asking this question when we got the MAP presentation, like, the MAP test is untimed, but we're using this to determine I don't want to say it wrong, but it was like how the ability to learn, I think that was it. But if it's not in a time situation, I kind of come back to that, like it doesn't represent, we're kind of qualifying the data based on this time factor, but then we're saying the MAP test is useful because it's untimed and it shows the ability to learn. But if we're kind of caveating it with the time issue, then is there some way to adapt the MAP test to account for that? And if so, do we think that might balance the ratio of the optimal ranges issue? I know that you can't answer that, I'm just bringing it
Right.
up.
They're interesting questions, but
I mean, Algebra 1 in seventh grade is accelerated just because of what it is. So if you, I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's like, is it accelerated or is it not accelerated? Should everyone just take it or should no one take it? I mean, you know, it doesn't make any sense. It's very confusing as to, I know everyone wants to take Algebra 1 in seventh grade, but you can't, because not everyone's ready for Algebra 1 in seventh grade.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they've determined that if you have this range between 247, which you qualify, and 255, which you would theoretically have a better chance of success at, there's that 8-point delta that suggests that those kids are going to struggle with accelerated Algebra 1.
Yeah. I mean, if you're taking this class, you shouldn't really need a tutor. You should just be really good at math. And I find it hard to believe the numbers.
And that comes back to my point about the timing.
Is this also based, I know, going from 5th grade to 6th grade accelerated math, or even going from 7th to 8th grade? They have like this point system, like you have to have a score on the map, you have to have a score,
There's
a
a
grade
rubric.
on the test, like there's a point system. Is there any consideration of altering the, like perhaps the points that you get for the actual course grade you're in should be higher than
Reweighting.
what you're getting, right, what
Yeah.
you're getting on an untimed test, because really how you're performing in your current grade is far more indicative of what you'll do the next year. That's pretty much to your time point.
That's my confusion about kind of the MAP principle in general, the ability to learn. Like, I understand what that is, but if it's not encompassed in like a real world scenario, then what is it actually measuring?
Well, I mean, I think at the meeting, we left it that we're going to monitor this year, and there might be time to readjust the rubric.
Right.
I mean, this rubric came about because it used to just be a test to get in, and there was no requirement for a certain grade in the year before's class and stuff like that. And so, you know, people said, well, shouldn't their past performance matter? You know what I mean? If the kid isn't mature enough or doesn't have study habits yet, just because they could score well on one test. So that's where this rubric came from. So maybe it's time to look at the rubric again. We'll see how these kids do this year.
does anyone else have any questions? Mr. Byrne?
I just want to comment briefly on STEM, but I think I could probably add the Algebra 1 and other. I think the body of knowledge doubles every 8 years. And what's scary, I see biomedical, that's usually graduate work, at least in med school, and yet we're teaching it in high school. Engineering is certainly college material, but these courses sound like they're college courses, and I would, yes, you might be able to take a little sliver and teach one little tiny aspect of something to younger students, but once the STEM program was introduced, it was, this is the way to the future, and we're going to shortcut things and expand. I don't believe that's true at all, and I think these courses, the names of them and the explanations of what they're teaching, they're good for orientation, but this is not college material, and it's certainly not medical school material. That's my opinion.
Right.
And I think,
These are elective courses, and students are still taking all their core academic courses.
I understand, but the school day is just as long as it was 20 or 30 or 50 years ago. And with the body of knowledge expanding, stuff is getting dropped to make room for this material. So
No, it's not.
very complicated, the education process.
Any other questions for Linda? No? Okay, thank you. We're up to the Advocacy Committee.
Advocacy met on September 10th. Since it was the first meeting of the year, we did a lot of introductions. We talked about administrative updates. Kristen Fox is the new Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. Jennifer Rayfields is the new Director of Social Studies K-12. Stephanie Orr is the new Director of Special Education 6 through 12, and Hank Werner is the new Director of Safety and Security. We talked a little bit about affordable housing, just to let the PTO presidents know that Board of Education members attend the Township Committee meetings regularly. We will start attending the Planning Board meetings and looking at the planning board agendas, just to see if we can glean any information about any new construction developments in the town. Mr. McCarrion has regular conversations with the business administrator for the town, Berners Township Administrator. So there's a lot of information. We just wanted people to know that we're kind of, we're interested in the topic. We're keeping on top of it. And once we have a better idea of like what the developments are going to look like in terms of numbers of bedrooms and sizes and price points and things, we're going to have the demographer take a look at those new developments and report back to us. Mr. McCarrion gave a overview of the summer updates in the schools, which he gave last week, I believe, at his superintendent meeting. Update for the board agenda. We talked a little bit about security. Mr. Warner is going to be responsible for all 6 buildings, and he's going to be monitoring them and meeting with staff and looking over things at all of the buildings. And we need to give him some time to learn the buildings and the staff and to be patient with his recommendations if he has any to give us. We'll be hearing from him in the future. I'm sure he'll be coming to a Board of Ed meetings. There has been police presence at all the schools, and they randomly visit them, so those are good. We have new cameras at some of the schools. There is a man-trap entrance was changed, and there is on the Township Committee agenda a description, or I guess to approval with an agreement of the Board of Education to hire an SLEL3 officer. Mr. Kraus is considering placing greeters at the front entrance, sort of to direct traffic now that the welcome desk is not at the front anymore, just so people make sure they're going in the right direction and get to the places where they need to go when they're visiting. We went over the procedures for fundraising and how to get donations accepted from the PTOs. Mr. McCarrion went over the enrollment numbers at each school at the last board meeting. We just told them about our district goals, which include safety and security, the strategic planning meetings, and social emotional learning to be continued. Ms. Box attended to get an idea from the PTO presidents what curricular-related presentations they'd be interested in seeing, and also to see if, sort of get a sense from them the time of day that they want to meet. The elementary level PTOs definitely wanted to have their presentations during the morning because it's easier for them to get their attendance. WAMS and Ridge were more open to nighttime meetings. Some of the things that were brought up were having a potential grammar workshop where the parents could learn how the kids are actually supposed to be learning language arts skills, and wanted the parents to actually participate in workshops. Janet Inkiel used to do that years ago, and some people requested that they do that again. There was a lot of interest in STEM presentations, sort of as a K-12 overview and what we have available for STEM-related classes in the district. There was an interest in anything SEL related to go forward. And then there was another comment from a PTO president that they would like to see us keep on our radar any opportunities to add more counselors at the elementary level. At the end of our meeting minutes, I listed all the PTO president meetings as I have today. There's some more that I got since this that I'll be adding to you, but just to let you guys know that this week on Wednesday, September 26th, is the Cedar Hill PTO meeting at 9 a.m. in the cafeteria. And that's all I have so far. Anything? Any questions? Yeah? Sure.
When you were mentioning the grammar workshop, I would rather them just teach the kids grammar in school. Just saying. I mean, I don't need, as a parent, to go to a grammar workshop when, they don't, the grammar in the school's been kind of dropped for other things, I feel like. And when people are pushing for STEM in grammar school, when they're not even teaching them grammar, I have a couple of issues with that. Not that it's happening, I'm just saying that maybe like
Well,
a rethink about.
Grammar is being taught at the elementary level, definitely since my kids were in.
Well,
in
We've got I got a packet.
Packets.
Yeah, I got packets.
Still, packets of count, I think, a little bit.
Just saying.
But the idea behind the workshop was so that the parents knew what was developmentally appropriate. Some felt like that they were over helping their children and
With the packet?
No, with just like grammar, wanting more and like demanding more of their students than they were ready for, so.
Oh, so it's more of like a developmental type of thing instead of like
Yeah,
actually
showing
learning
them what they're
grammar
ready
means.
for at different ages.
Right, I'm just weighing in that I think, maybe a better balance in school with the grammar, just from what I've seen and what other parents have asked about, like, that people talk about a lot. I'm around and people say, I wish my kid in high school had more grammar when they were younger because they're having trouble with it's very important for writing, and it just is something that it's not our fault. I'm not saying it's the teacher's fault, it's just the way the Common Core helped us out with that, and,
But we can
dropping
have.
things down. I don't know,
We can add that to curriculum, committee take a look at that when
It's
they
probably
have
not
their
that popular, but I just
discussion.
think it's like something to still to look at, and then, whereas like, I get anything STEM, but to me STEM can be learned, when you're a little bit older.
Yeah,
Jen,
they're
I
gonna
would
be-
like to say that I'd like to see them go back to having more cursive.
I'm down.
That might be
I'm down
something
with
for
it.
because these kids that are coming out of elementary school are no longer able to
They can't
write
write.
cursive at all. Like, they can't even sign their names.
No, they can't sign their names. It's a couple issues there, but,
Again, I can
let's rock the slide.
pass that baton to curriculum.
Jen, there was
I'm sorry,
some
I just put it up
conversation
there.
last year about cursive in the one or more of the curriculum committee meetings. You could probably see what was said in the last year's folder with the minutes, and I don't remember off the top of my head.
Right. And the parents were going to also come back and, the PTO presidents were going to talk to their boards and come back with some more ideas because this was just, preliminary first week of school ideas that they thought of, and I'm sure we'll get a lot of good presentations out of it.
Any other questions for Karen? Okay, we're up to SEL, which I think is meeting.
So we're meeting this Thursday at 8 a.m.
Okay. Are there any liaison committee reports? No. Okay. So we're up to public comment on non-agenda items. If anyone has a comment or question, make sure you sign a clipboard after you ask your question and tell us your name and address when you come up to the microphone. Thank you.
We're ready, signed in. Hi. Hello, my name is Angelica Nab. This is my mom, Steph Verona. I'm currently a senior, a special education student within Ridge. I actually don't attend Ridge. I attend out-of-district school in Paramus. But I've had a lot go on, and a lot of credits have been missed, but there's been a lot of trouble keeping records, I guess, because I don't know what credits I owe. I don't know what credits I need to finish, to graduate. I don't know what to say.
Hi, my legal name is Estefania Verona. I've been dealing with Gene O'Connell, Director, Special Services. We've gotten nowhere since May. I had to file a due process petition. We've gone to court. We're still nowhere. I just need to know if someone could help us. I need someone to intercept here. This is really causing a hardship for us. This is her 4th year. I don't know what credits she's going to have. I continuously email Ms. Smith, Ms. Sweet, Ms. Eckel, Ms. Ross, Ms. O'Connell to try to get a transcript, and don't have anything. I need the board's help. We have to go to court again this Thursday, and going to miss a day of work, and you guys are going to incur more legal fees for your attorney, and we are nowhere. And I need your help. I need some kind of educational plan for my daughter. I did practically beg this of Ms. O'Connell, and again, I am nowhere. Thank you.
Is there anyone else for public comment? No? Okay, I'll close public comment.
Mrs. Knapp, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Typically, the board's not going to respond to individual student issues in public, but I'll certainly give you a call.
Okay, we're up to board forum. Does anyone have anything they would like to raise for board forum?
I know that the board is going to be reading the other side of the report card, and I was just wondering if we had any kind of schedule for starting on that.
I don't remember who I was talking to, but I thought we should probably get through the strategic plan
First,
because we have a
okay.
lot of meetings for that, and then maybe
Okay,
we can
and
make a
then after
schedule
that-
for after, like starting in January or something.
Okay.
After we get through that part. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think everybody got their books, though, on the board.
Right, I know it was at one of the committees we got it.
Curriculum,
And,
we got it.
Yeah, how many people still need to get copies of the books? Okay, so they're over in the board office. So when you go into your next committee meeting, they'll be there. Just make sure you get them.
I just want to mention, well, the pep rally's on Friday. And the kids are having their Spirit Week. I guess it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I know it's Rose Waldo Wednesday. I don't know the other ones, but I'm kind of excited. The kids seem to be excited about the pep rally coming up. And then in the football teams, 3-0, although they're playing, I think they're playing someone very difficult this week. I don't know. And the dance, and there's a dance, a homecoming dance, which is exciting. So Saturday, I think, is a dance. So, I just thought I'd throw it out there and, encourage the kids to go to the dance and have some old-fashioned, clean fun.
I
And
saw the senior T-shirts. I think they have a picture
the seniors got their
tomorrow.
T-shirts
Yeah.
today, and they're
Yeah.
taking a picture tomorrow, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe, I don't know. This is all
Oh,
like
it's Thursday now?
T-shirts.
Okay. I'm like, how
Never
I just
mind,
know
so
that-
I just thought I'm excited. I think their kids are excited, and I think it's nice to see kids excited about something like that, So I thought I'd throw it out there.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything? No? Okay, we're up to adjournment. Would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Salmon and Mrs. Korn. Thank you. Oh, we all in favor of adjourning? Aye.